Welcome everybody to the Hawaii News Now Digital Center. We are joined by Representative Lisa Marten. She represents Waimānalo as well as several Windward Oahu districts. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Yep, I represent several neighborhoods in Kailua and Waimānalo.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Maybe name them so everyone's familiar.
Okay, so Lanikai, Keolu Hills, and Enchanted Lakes.
Okay, wonderful. Those are very wonderful neighborhoods.
They are. I'm very, very lucky to live there and to represent my district.
So tell us a little bit about some of the priorities you're taking on this legislative session.
Well, I'm chair of Human Services and Homelessness in the House, so that is my job in the building to look at those issues. And right now, our federal administration is keeping us very busy for those issues. So my biggest priority this session is keeping our residents on their assistance, on their benefits, Medicaid, SNAP, public housing. And it's challenging. There's a lot of new requirements being put up by the federal government, and those requirements are specifically to get people off those benefits so we can cut the federal budget. And so I would like to do everything we can to foil that attempt and to keep that money coming in and keep people on their benefits, because as a state we pay either way. If people lose Medicaid, then we pay for them in the emergency room. If people lose housing, if they lose food benefits, in the end, we have to find other ways to provide those services. So the goal is to keep them on benefits. And I have a few different bills.
I was going to ask you about that. What bills
Yeah.
we can look forward to?
Yeah, so I have a few bills targeting exactly that. And when I say I, it's not me. This is Majority Caucus focus, one of our priority areas in the House. And I'm working with my colleagues on it, and it really is a kako thing. We need support from everybody, especially if something's expensive. It's a very, very tight budget year. And if we want something to pass, it really has to be something that is a priority for our members. It can't be a personal project.
Okay.
So in collaboration with my peers, I've been working on a few bills. One of them is to establish a Hawaii benefit hub. And that would be a state-owned, statewide database for all of our benefits. So if a person, a resident, is wondering what they qualify for, they know they need help, they're not sure what they qualify for, they can go to one place, one door, electronically, and see what is available, what they qualify for, upload their information. And the reason it's so important is the new requirements for our federal benefits are very complicated to document. They're requiring that a broader range of people show that they're either working in school or doing community service, 80 hours a month, which is a half-time job. And for SNAP, which is our food stamps, there have been some work requirements for a long time already, but they have been restricted to a narrower group that in Hawaii is most likely working. Now they are expanding to kupuna that are not that are older. So it used to be age 55 and up, you didn't have the work requirements. Now it's age 65 and up. Mm-hmm. It used to be if you had a child or a dependent 18 years or younger in the home, you were not required to work. Now you have to have a child who's 13 or younger. It used to be our homeless were not required, our formerly incarcerated, recently released were not required, former foster kids. So all these groups are veterans. Groups that used to be exempt now have to show those hours, and pretty significant hours. And it's, again, for housing, Medicaid, and SNAP. And those kick in at different times, but we kind of have to ramp up. So we want to make it easy for people to document their hours in one place, and we want to make it easy for the agencies to get that information from one place, because it's a lot of work for them. And we have chronic shortages in state staffing. So Medicaid, for the first time ever, will have to document those hours. For the first time ever, they have to do eligibility twice a year instead of once a year. That's a lot of staff time and resources. So hoping to make it easy on the agencies, make it easy on our residents, and document that. Another bill.
Just listen. Well, hold on. Let's back up. Just listening to that was a lot, and just from someone you would think is more aware of these things, it's already a lot. So imagine for people that are just trying to work and survive, and trying to navigate all this new information that you're talking about. So if this is a bill you're proposing, and if what's the goal? When would this benefit hub launch? If it got passed.
We're talking about government, so everything takes a long time, right? If this passes, the governor would hopefully sign it into law in July.
Okay.
And then probably in the fall, funds could be released, and then they have to start working on it. So I would say not till we are well into 2027.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's no time like the present to start working on things to make life better for our residents, right?
Okay.
And the other program that complements it is setting aside grant funds for nonprofits that work with a lot of these groups that might have trouble working and meeting those requirements to stay on benefits, and creating volunteer and training opportunities for them. So it could be nonprofits that already have volunteer opportunities, like the Food Bank, Hawaii Food Bank, and all of their many partners. And now they possibly expand those opportunities, maybe add training opportunities that count to them, and allow there to be convenient locations for people to log those hours that they need. The same thing for maybe groups that, for example, homeless shelters, create programs there so that they can log their hours. Different organizations that work with groups that might be affected, like our kupuna, create more volunteer opportunities. So the idea is to set aside some funds, a little bit like we just did.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because I feel like we already have a program like that.
But we just set aside funds for organizations that lost federal funding. And that was, so we set them aside. We didn't know during last year's session. We knew it was coming, but we didn't know who was going to be hit and by how much. So we set aside $50 million that was appropriated in the fall to different organizations that were then able to document what actually hit them with HR 1 passing, and what their losses were, and what vital community services they were no longer going to be able to provide. So in the same vein, this would be saved for after, and this is targeting a real narrow goal of organizations that likely work with these populations so they have good access to them, and are motivated. So again, using the example of the Hawaii Food Bank, it is their goal to keep people in our state eating. So they are, are motivated to try to keep people on their benefits. So have these groups come and apply and tell us how they can help people log those volunteer and training hours, and hopefully not just log the hours, but help their organizations grow. Everybody needs volunteers, right? Help the organizations grow, become stronger, and provide that meaningful community connection and sense of purpose and pride that comes with learning new things and working.
Yeah, no, these sound like wonderful programs. I think the challenge, as you said, is trying to make the case for funding in a very tight budget year, right? When there's so many priorities.
And again, it's just, we are spending some money, but hopefully we'll get so much more back by keeping these federal dollars coming into our state, hitting populations and services that we really care about. And on that note, the last bill, that is actually a bigger budget bill, but in some ways a little less sexy, because it's not bringing in something new, it's not creating something new, but that is to increase the amount of our state contracts across the board for the Department of Human Services. At this time, there is a movement called the True Cost Coalition, and they are basically arguing with credibility that they are doing the work of the state, sometimes required work, for example, doing visits to foster families every month, that we do not have staff in our state to do. So we contract it out to these social service organizations like Catholic Charities or others like that. They do the work, but the amount of money we give them for that work has not gone up as salaries have increased, as inflation has hit. their utilities, their rent, gas, and also insurance. They've dealt with a lot of really steep increases in insurance costs, which we require them to have that liability insurance in order to have that state contract. So trying to increase the amount of money that we pay for these services, and Department of Human Services is so broad, right? We serve homeless people, youth, kupuna, disabled, and then people, of course, that are just poor. So all those groups are impacted when those organizations can't afford to provide the service, even though they would like to. It's their mission. But they simply can't afford it. At this time, they help make up the gap by private fundraising, with charitable donations and grant writing. And so they're literally paying to do our state contracts for us, in part.
So this bill would essentially increase the amount of money that they would be able to get from these contracts.
For existing contracts with DHS,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. That that also makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah.
what kind of pushback do you get when you make these types of cases? Is it what I've heard personally would be we should reduce spending, right? Like there should be ways that we promote ways that people get off of government subsistence, right? That's the argument you tend to hear. What do you say to them?
Not everybody has the same shot in life. Not everybody is given the same opportunities, the same skill sets, right? We have people that we need to help. And I'm really proud that Hawaii as a state believes in a social safety net. And for some people, it's just a hand up temporarily, when they're going through a rough time, and they will be self-sufficient, paying taxes, giving back for the rest of their lives. For a lot of people, it's that. But there are some people, they are disabled, they're not well for whatever reason. They will never be self-sufficient. And yet we choose to help them have the best life they can have.
Well, speaking of which, it's timely because we're coming up on the point in time count. Is that something that you follow, and have you seen kind of improvement in the state of homelessness here, or is it a constant kind of challenge that we are not really moving the needle on?
I do see some improvements in the sense that we have a lot more facilities, right? The governor's Kauhale initiative, which has really adopted a lot of existing programs that preceded that initiative, but taking them into the same budget stream. Those facilities, like in my community I see, we have 2 facilities that we didn't used to have before I was elected, and a lot of people have gotten off the street. And sometimes that's the first step in that path to recovery and self-sufficiency, is just being in a safe place where you can lock the door and have your belongings in there and start to get connected with case management, social services, drug treatment if that's what you need, employment training if that's what you need, and just get started on that path to get Section 8 housing vouchers perhaps and move into your own place. So we have 2 places that have gotten a lot of people off the street, and this is my community, some of those people I went to high school with, right? So these are our people that we're talking about, and we want to help them. We want to give them that hand up, and I do see those places really changing lives. And in terms of those social services, literally this morning on my way to work, I had a constituent call me. I don't think he knew he was calling my cell phone, but he was. And
you give your cell phone out.
I do, and it gets passed around. So anyways, he called me, and we connected him with services because he was, he's kupuna, he's almost 80, and he has never been homeless, but the place he was living with a relative was unavailable to him. And we connected him with IHS, which is one of these contracted agencies by DHS that does outreach for homeless or people that are at risk of homelessness. And the case manager picked him up 12 hours before he was to be evicted. He called this man an angel, and I can't tell you how heartfelt he was about that. And he took him to a place that they had visited for shelter that he could live for a while until they sort out his long-term housing. And so these services prevented this Native Hawaiian kupuna in my district from becoming homeless, right? He He's a great guy. I actually gave him a certificate before all this came up, recognizing him as a lifelong paddling coach in the community. He worked for the Department of Transportation Airports for 35 years. This is a man who has given to our state, and he was at risk of being homeless when he's a little bit older and frail. So that's pretty heartbreaking. These are not people that are taking advantage of this. These are people that just need and deserve a place. And because we contract those social services, they're able to get those, that help that they need.
I think you're addressing a common myth that we always hear about the homeless population here is, they're from the mainland and they're just kind of leeching off of our
Some
resources.
Some of them are, and I hate that too, right? I can't help but agree that when I see people from the mainland, it's frustrating because you're like, how can we solve this problem if you can't turn off the tap, right? If it's an infinite entry, and I think it's really inappropriate for organizations from other places to send their homeless to us, especially they're very hard to deal with homeless, with a lot of mental health problems. So I agree, but that's no reason not to help the homeless, because in the end, a lot of them are ours.
Yeah. Well, and then the program, I don't know if you've heard of this program, but is there effort to, again, send some of the ones that are from the continent back to their families, reunite them back on the continent, because that's an expensive plane ticket, right? So there's efforts to do that.
Yes, we have a program like that, and what they do is they connect with family back on the mainland, wherever the person is from, and then what they do is they pay for half the trip back. They find if they pay for the whole trip, sometimes people just come right back. And so they need someone to have a little bit of skin in the game, pay for part of the ticket, and get that person back. And part of it is the plane ticket, but part of it is just reconnecting them with their family. A lot of people that come here from the mainland and are homeless have mental health problems, right? And maybe they came here as a tourist and things went wrong. And they just don't have the skills, to deal with that. They lost their wallet. And then suddenly everything downward spiraled. And it seems bizarre, but it happens to people. And then they're here. But when you reconnect them with their community, then sometimes those people are actually really glad to have found them and help bring them back.
Yeah. So you said we did have a program, or do we still? Is that an ongoing thing?
Yeah, it's an ongoing program. Okay. The name is escaping my mind right now.
Yeah, me too. I read about it, and I was wondering if that was still a thing.
So it is still a thing. Okay. It is funded, and
we'll have to look it up, and then we'll put it online, so in case anyone was interested in connecting with that. But no, these are all wonderful programs, and I'm glad that you were able to share it with our audience. As we look forward, is there kind of something like a message that you want people to take with them as they're watching the session? There's a lot of challenges all of you guys are going to be facing. There's also some kind of a lot of noise around what's happening this session with distrust or budget constraints. So I don't know if there's something that you'd like to share from your perspective about what lawmakers are working on.
In terms of distrust, I just feel like, to be honest, a lot of my colleagues, all they do is work hard, as do I. And really, I'm not seeing that among the among the people that I'm working with and hanging out with there. I'm just not seeing that. I can't speak for the minority caucus, right? I don't know what they're doing, but, speaking for my colleagues that I work with, I don't know. I would doubt if that person is still among us. I'm guessing that person heard that something was up and tried to make a quiet exit, but I don't know. And in terms of the budget, it's real, right? We are facing budget constraints. It's hard. My passion right now is environmental issues, right? That's why I ran. That's what I wanted to work on. I am doing more human services stuff. That is a professional background of mine, but and I'm happy to do it. I care about those issues, but I'm very passionate about the environment. I run an environmental nonprofit, and so I have a lot of legislation there, and I don't want our problems to keep us from moving forward in that way. I also worry a lot about climate change, right? So we really can't stop moving forward on that because we're so distracted by the temporary problems being created by our federal administration that we can't focus on our long-term problems like climate change. So I do have legislation around environmental issues as well, and I'll just be hoping that this session, as we do damage control, we're also able to move our state forward.
And wonderful note to end on. Representative Lisa Marten, thank you so much for joining us today. And it was great to talk about these important issues. I know the House's population is such a big issue, and it just seems so nuanced and complex, and it's good to see some bills that are going to be addressing that this session. So, all right. And that is all for us today. I'm Annalisa Burgos for Hawaii News Now. We'll see you next time.